explosions, flashbangs, and clouds of smoke. On January 31st, federal agents fired tear gas at a crowd of protesters outside the ICE building in Portland. The use of chemical munitions stoked public outrage and triggered backlash from local officials, in part because of who was affected: neighbors, families, and children. But the incident also raised broader questions about use of force. KGW analyzed more than 200 video clips showing federal officers confronting protesters outside Portland's ICE building since last summer. The videos present a detailed picture of how crowd control munitions are being misused, causing injuries and inflaming tensions even more. It's Saturday afternoon, January 31st. Roughly 1,000 protesters at a union-organized rally marched toward the ICE building in Portland's South Waterfront. The crowd chants. Most stay on the street. A few cross ICE's property line. At 4:32, the front gate opens, and federal officers in tactical gear push toward the crowd. The protesters retreat. 5 seconds later, officers fire less lethal. Agents toss smoke and chemical irritants into the crowd.
It's totally unprofessional.
Gil Kurlikowski is former head of U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
It's totally outside the standards that any police department or sheriff's department would use in managing a crowd.
Video shows federal agents shoot one man at close range.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Another round explodes at head level, searing a hole in an American flag.
That was clearly some type of explosive device that detonated at head level.
Spencer Fomby is a police instructor in crowd control.
Any officer who is trained to use less lethal impact munitions is trained to avoid the head, neck, groin, or spine.
Our review found since last summer, federal officers have repeatedly violated this guideline, shooting one protester in the head and aiming at others above the waist.
Aim for leg, aim for leg.
Back to January 31st, where the street is filled with heavy smoke. The crowd surges away from the building. There's no guidance on where to go or how to escape. Officers continue to fire less lethal, even though the crowd has largely dispersed.
You don't want to use force to punish people.
Franz Schaining is a commander with Portland Police.
I think what we have seen is uses of force by federal agencies down there that are disproportionate to the criminal behavior we're seeing.
The Department of Homeland Security's use of force policy says less lethal force can only be used when no reasonably effective, safe, and feasible alternative exists, and the level of force must be objectively reasonable. But our analysis shows federal agents repeatedly cross those lines. Officers have been filmed shooting pepper spray directly into the faces of people who do not appear to be violent or threatening, and tear gas has been used against peaceful protesters time and time again. Independent guidelines from the policy group Police Executive Research Forum are clear. These weapons should not be used against peaceful demonstrators, even if demonstrators are engaging in minor acts of civil disobedience, like occupying a park or blocking a street. On January 31st, we see federal officers firing pepper balls from the rooftop at distance, increasing the chance of hitting unintended targets. Video also shows federal officers lobbing tear gas far into the crowd, away from the building they're protecting. At one point, less lethal is launched from the top of the ICE office down the street.
It's not effective to do it that way.
It doesn't really make sense to launch munitions behind the crowd that you want to disperse.
If you throw it behind them, aren't you pushing them more toward your own building?
In a statement, DHS said its officers followed their training and used the minimum amount of force necessary to protect themselves, the public, and federal property. By 4:36, federal officers retreat inside the ICE building. Behind them, tear gas hangs in the air. Spent munitions cover the street. Federal policy says force should be a last resort. The video shows it's often the first response.